Okay, hello, good morning. In today's video lecture, I would like to speak about an interesting group of Mongols living in Qinghai province. I refer to them as Henan Oirats, the Henan Oirat or the Henan Mongols. As you might know, the Oirats uh, is a subgroup of Mongols, of ethnic Mongolians, and we often refer to them as Western Mongols. We have Oirats in Western Mongolia, in the three westernmost provinces of Mongolia, in Ops, Hovd, and Bayan-Ulgi. We also have Western Mongols, Oirat Mongols in China, mainly in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, in the northern half of this autonomous region in China, and in the neighboring Qinghai and Gansu provinces, also in China. And we have another branch of Oirat Mongols living near the estuary of the Volga River by the Caspian Sea in the Kalmyk Republic of Russia. Okay, now we are going to speak about a group of the Oirat Mongols living in Qinghai. Okay, now first, before we start, let's speak about the province itself, Qinghai province, because Qinghai province is a little bit unlike the average Chinese province. Qinghai province has has a big number of minorities, of non-Han Chinese residents within its boundaries. We have many minority groups in Qinghai. We have, first of all, we have the Tibetans. We have some Hui, the Chinese-speaking Muslims. We have Mongwars. In Chinese, they are referred to as Tuzu, Mongwars, and they are quite distantly related to the Mongols, but today we are not going to speak about them. And we have some Turkic-speaking groups, for example, the Salars in eastern Qinghai, and we have Mongols in Qinghai. The Mongols who live in Qinghai refer to themselves as Dade Mongol, meaning Upper Mongolians or Superior Mongolians, if you will, Upper or Superior Mongolians. But I will just use the term Dade, okay, Dade Mongols. And today I don't want to speak about the Dade Mongols in general. I will speak a little bit about them, but I want to focus on a particular group of the Dade Mongols who live in the easternmost on the easternmost fringes of Qinghai province in southeastern Qinghai. Why do I want to speak about them? Why am I interested in them? Why are we Mongolists interested in this particular group of Oirats? So this is quite obvious because they are quite isolated from the other groups of Mongols. Okay, if we look at the map, we can see that they do not have connection with other Mongolian groups. Okay, so the closest Mongolian group to their place of residence would be the group of the Haishi Mongols. They are Dade Mongols as well in Qinghai province, and I will speak about the Haishi Mongols quite soon. But first, let's look at the administrative divisions of Qinghai province. Okay, so I've just told you that that Qinghai province has many minority groups, and the largest of the minorities is the Tibetan group of people, Tibetans. We have a lot of Tibetans in Qinghai province, but Qinghai is not an autonomous region. You know, China has 5 autonomous regions. For example, the Inner Mongolian Autonomous Region, the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, or the Tibetan Autonomous Region, neighboring Qinghai province. Inner Mongolia is not a neighbor of Qinghai province. They don't have common boundaries, but the Inner Mongolian Autonomous Region is quite close to Qinghai. So in the vicinity of Qinghai, we have these three big autonomous regions of China. So autonomous region in Chinese is called 自治区. Qu is the term for region. 自治 means autonomy or autonomous. And the autonomous region is at the highest level of autonomy in China. The highest level of autonomy. It equals a province. So, and these autonomous regions are quite often referred to as China's provinces. It's a province level administrative unit. An autonomous region is a province level administrative unit. But below this province level, below the autonomous region, we have lower levels of autonomy as well. And Qinghai province, most of Qinghai province's territory consists of autonomous prefectures. Okay, so this is not an autonomous region. From the outside, Qinghai pretty much looks like an average Chinese province. It's just a regular Chinese province, but it consists of, most of its territory consists of autonomous prefectures. And other areas within China usually don't have prefectures. Okay, Gansu has prefectures, Qinghai has prefectures, and mainly, or yes, exclusively, minority inhabited regions, minority inhabited territories have prefectures in China. Normally, an average regular Chinese province consists of counties. In Chinese, county is xian. So province is sheng, and one sheng consists of many xians, okay, counties. But Qinghai, Gansu, and these regions with a large population of minorities have another level of administration between the county and the province, and this is in Chinese zhou, in English prefecture. Okay, so Qinghai province has the following autonomous prefectures. Okay, let's go from northeast to northwest. Okay, we have Haipei Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture, one Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. We have Xining, the capital city and its vicinity. We have Haidong. This is just a normal, regular, it's a region, it's not a prefecture even. So we have two areas, or two administrative units within Qinghai that are not prefectures. This is Xining, the capital area, and Haidong, this is a region or district. We might say it's a district, but all the rest are autonomous prefectures. So we have Haipei, one Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. We have Hainan Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. We have Huangnan Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. We have Guoluo Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture, and Yushu Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. So we have 5 Tibetan Autonomous Prefectures, and the last one, last but not least, is Haixi Mongol and Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. The largest of all is Haixi Mongol Tibetan Autonomous Prefectures. So we have 5 Tibetan Autonomous Prefectures within Qinghai, and 1 Mongol and Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. Okay? All right. But if we go further down in the concerning the levels of administration and autonomy, we have autonomous counties in Qinghai as well. So each prefecture in Qinghai consists of counties, and there are counties in which one or more minorities has autonomy. Okay, I'm not going to delve into the question of autonomy in China, what autonomy means in China, how real this autonomy is. Okay, I'm not going to speak about this because my knowledge is just not adequate to discuss this issue, I think. But I'm just going to mention. I just want to outline the structure of administration, the administrative system of Qinghai province. So the bottom line is that within these autonomous prefectures, we have counties, and some of these counties are autonomous counties. Okay, what will interest us the most is Huangnan Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture in the easternmost part of Qinghai. This name Huangnan in Chinese means that this prefecture is situated south from the Yellow River. The upper reaches of the Yellow River is here. So the Yellow River takes its origin in Qinghai province, and it leaves the province boundary in Haidong, if I'm correct. And south from this is situated Huangnan Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture. Okay, why is this interesting? Because if we take a look at this prefecture's map, we discover that this prefecture has 4 counties. Okay, from north to south, these counties are Jianzha County, just a normal county, Tongren County, again a normal county, Zeku County, and the last one, the southernmost county, is Henan County. This is the the county in which the Henan Oirat live. All right. The whole prefecture, Huangnan, is inhabited by mostly by Tibetans. I don't know the percentage of Tibetans in this county, but it approaches 90%, or maybe even more than 90% of the county is Tibetan. But it has a lot of Tibetan people. There are a lot of Tibetan people in this county, and we also have some Salar here, and we have the Mongols in Henan County. And now today I want to speak about these Mongols. Okay, so first, if we wanted to discuss these Mongols, these Henan Oirat, then first we have to speak about the Dade Mongols, the Upper Mongols or Superior Mongols. Now I will relate my fieldwork experiences among the Dade Mongols from a little personal point of view. Okay, so in 2005, when my wife and I stayed in Mongolia for a year, we made friends with a young Mongolian couple who spoke Mongolian with a curious accent. And actually my wife made friends with them first, and she asked, where they were from. And they told her that they had come from Qinghai, from what is eastern Tibet. They said they had come from eastern Tibet to Mongolia and they were studying on a scholarship in Mongolia. We made friends with this young couple, and they invited us to visit them in Qinghai. And 2 years later, we had the chance to go to Qinghai. We visited our friends in Haixi because they lived in Haixi, Mongol and Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture in Tulan Township. We visited them, and we conducted fieldwork research in Haixi among the Mongols. Okay, we familiarized ourselves with this local Dade Mongol dialect. We learned a lot about the Mongols who lived there. We learned to speak their dialect a little bit. So we conducted fieldwork research, and a year later, in 2008, we returned back to Tulan, and we again conducted a fieldwork research there in Haixi for the second time. And on our way back, first we traveled to Xining, the capital of the province, the seat of Qinghai province, and we were about to go back to Beijing by train, but for the train we had to wait I think maybe 3 or 4 days, so we had a couple of days till we could sit on the train back to Beijing, and we wanted to use this opportunity to look around in the surroundings of Xining. And I remember I was reading the map of the province, looking for some interesting places to see, to visit, and I discovered that in Huangnan Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture there was a Mongol Autonomous County. Okay, there was a Mongol Autonomous County, Henan County, and I thought, hey, this Mongol Autonomous County is located quite far from the other areas where Mongolian people live in the province. So it's quite far from Haixi, the Mongol and Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture of Haixi. This is so isolated. So there might be a group of Mongols who are very much isolated from the other Mongols, and I wondered if they could still speak Mongolian there, because all the surrounding counties and prefectures are Tibetan counties and prefectures. And for example, Golok Tibetan Autonomous Prefecture is more than 90% Tibetan. Huangnan, the prefecture within which this Henan County is situated, is also inhabited vastly by Tibetans. So I became really interested in these Henan Mongols, and so we decided to go there. We traveled to Henan County, and we could stay only one night there in the center of Henan County, and we made contact with the local people. You know, the local people spoke Amdo-Tibetan. On the streets you could hear only Amdo-Tibetan, not even Chinese, or maybe very little Chinese, but Amdo-Tibetan was the main language that they spoke. They dressed like the surrounding Tibetans, so it was like Tibet. It was a Tibetan area at first sight. And we asked the local people, of course, about this Mongolian dialect. Many people couldn't even speak Chinese, even basic Chinese, but some people could, of course, especially young people. And we were told that most of the people told us that nobody spoke Mongolian in Henan. Nobody spoke Mongolian. This dialect had died out. there were no more people left who could speak Mongolian. But we bumped into some people who said that, yes, I am Mongolian and I can speak Mongolian. Oh, really, really? Please tell something to us in Mongolian. And they said, Sambai no hello in Mongolian, and they could count to 10 from 1 to 10, but in the wrong order, like 1, 2, 5, 7, 6, like this. But they couldn't tell more in Mongolian to us. And we met a guy who told us that in the county, not in the county center, but about 60 kilometers, 60 or 70 kilometers from the county center, there were Mongolians who could still speak this dialect fluently. But at this time, it was in 2008, if I remember correctly. This time we didn't have time to travel to such a remote area. We had to return back to Xining and then to Beijing and then home. We didn't have time to check this information. 4 years later, in 2012, I had the opportunity, I had the chance to go back to Qinghai, to Henan County, and to go to those remote areas for the first time. Okay, first, of course, I went to the county center. I stayed at a hotel, at a cheap hotel, and the first morning when I woke up, I went down to the reception to pay my room, and I asked the receptionist. She was a young girl, about 18 or 20 years old. Well, I asked her about Mongolians in general and the Mongolian language, and I asked if she happened to know anybody who spoke this Mongolian dialect, and she told me, yes, of course, my grandmother lives in the countryside in a place called Kisin, but now she's in the center. She's 15 minutes by walk from here. I will call her to meet you. And I was very happy, of course, and she called her grandmother to the hotel. We sat down with each other, and she was the first person with whom I could speak Mongolian. She spoke the local Mongolian dialect. She was over 70 years of age. She was between 70 or 80, or maybe above 80 a little bit. She was a very old lady, deep from the countryside, and well, she spoke fluent Mongolian. And initially I spoke Dade Mongol, what I had learned in Haishi, because I suspected that this dialect must have been related to the Haishi dialect, and actually it was, but it had some special features, some special unique features, and this made it really hard for the first time to understand. But after 10 or 15 minutes, we began to understand each other, and we could have a quite pleasant communication, quite pleasant conversation with each other. This was really fun, and this went well. And this old lady told me that in Kisin, the township where she had come from, were other mainly elderly people who could still speak this dialect fluently. So, of course, the next day or 2 days later, I don't remember, I traveled to Kisin by bus. I think it was a 4 or 5 hour bus ride. And as soon as I got off from the bus, I I bumped into a group of old people, and I turned to them in Mongolian and asked if there was anybody who could speak Mongolian, and there was an old man who proudly said, yes, yes, I can speak Mongolian. And we had a conversation. He even started to sing a local Mongolian song, but after 2 lines he forgot the lyrics, but it was fun, and he could speak Mongolian. And I went around in the township. I visited many people, and I found a lot of mainly elderly people who could still fluently speak this Mongolian dialect, and but there were also some middle-aged or younger people who were able to communicate rather fluently in this dialect. The youngest speaker was 32 years old. He was a Buddhist monk, a lama. He was a lama, 32 years old, and the reason why he could still fluently speak this dialect was that he had elder relatives who spoke Mongolian at home, and he was interested in improving his command of this dialect. He was the only one person in this township who was actually interested in maintaining and using this Mongolian dialect. And he watched Inner Mongolian TV. He watched Inner Mongolian language programs from the Inner Mongolian TV, and this influenced his usage of the language. But still, he spoke this dialect with the unique local features of this dialect. Okay, so in Kisin Township, I found, I don't know, maybe 20 people, around 20. I had communicated with around 20 or 20 plus people who still spoke this dialect quite well. And I estimate that there must be at least 100 people who understand this local Mongolian dialect quite well, and there are maybe 10 or around a dozen people who really speak it fluently, really speak this dialect fluently. Okay, but I have to add that when you walk around in Kisin, in the township, this Mongolian speaking area, people do not speak Mongolian. They speak Amdo-Tibetan to each other. They only use Mongolian within their homes. They rarely use it outside on the streets with each other, because they don't know if the other person can understand them. So Amdo-Tibetan is without question the dominant language of Kisin Township, but there are still people who can speak this dialect. And then in 2014, a PhD student from our Department of Mongolian Studies and I, his name is Mate and I, went back to Henan, to Kisin. First we collected speech, we collected audio material, many hours of interviews. We made interviews with the speakers, and then we visited another township where we suspected Mongolian was still spoken. And in this other township, it's Sirlong. Its name is Sirlong, a neighboring township to the east. We found only three people who could speak Mongolian, this dialect of Mongolian. Okay, so this is all. And now let's speak a little bit about the history of the Henan Oirat. How did they get there? How did they get to this place where they live today? Okay. So the first Mongols, the first people of Mongolian origin who got to this area, to what is today Henan County in Qinghai province, were the people of Kublai Khan. Okay, they were not Oirats. They were not Oirats. They belonged to the Tumadarwo group of Mongolians of Kublai Khan in 1253, when Kublai Khan launched his expedition against the Dali kingdom in southwestern China. After the conquests of Dali kingdom, on their way back, a group of his people, the Tumadarwo group of Kublai, settled down in this region, in what is today Henan County, and they established military posts and pastures for the Mongols' war horses. Okay, most of the Tumadarwo gradually became Tibetans during the course of the following centuries, but a small group living in what is today Doksum Township. Doksum is also a neighboring township of Kisin. So in Doksum Township was in the beginning of the Qing dynasty incorporated by the Torgut, another group of Oirats, another Mongolian group. And there are some households today in Doksum, in this township, that use different belts for their yurts, for their felt tents, different yurt belts, and different kitchen utensils than the other groups of Mongolian origin. And this fact might be an indication that they are in fact the descendants of the Tumadarwo group, because they are different than the other groups of Mongolian origin. We don't know this for sure, but this might be a sign that they are the descendants of the Tumadarwo group. Okay. Later in the 16th century, the Tumat Altan Khan moved to Qinghai from his power base in the Ordos region. From Ordos, he moved to Qinghai several times, at least 3 times, in 1559, in 1569, and finally in 1577, when he met Sonam Gyatso, the Tibetan, high-ranking Tibetan monk. He met him by the Qinghai Lake, at the shores of the Qinghai Lake, and Altan Khan bestowed upon him the title Dalai Lama. This is a famous story from Mongolian history. He bestowed upon him the title Dalai Lama, and at this time Altan Khan had more than 80,000 people in Qinghai, including some 10,000 families from the Ordos region, and several clans of the Tumat tribe of the Mongols, the Tumat Mongols. And after he met Sonam Gyatso, and Sonam Gyatso, he intended to stay in Qinghai, but Sonam Gyatso persuaded him, Altan Khan, to leave Qinghai and return to the east, to the Ordos, which he did, but some of his Mongols, some of his Tumat Mongols, stayed in Qinghai, and then they migrated. They made little migrations within the territory of Qinghai, and they reached the territory which is today Henan County, Henan Mongol Autonomous County. Almost a century later, another group of Mongols appeared in Qinghai, the Khalkh Mongols of Tsogkhtai. Tsogkhtai was the supporter of the Karma Kagyu order of Buddhism, the Red Hat sect of Buddhism, and he was expelled from Mongolia because he he had a serious conflict, or a series of serious conflicts with other Mongolian Chinggisid princes, and he had to leave Mongolia, and he took shelter in Qinghai, in what is today Qinghai province, and this most probably happened in between 1632 and 1634. He moved to Qinghai and he subjugated the Tumud and the Tumadarwu, and possibly the already Tibetanized Tumadarwu groups of this region. So he subjugated these and incorporated these Mongolian people. Tsokttaj, a devout supporter of the Karma Kagyu order, attempted to annihilate the Gelugpa order. He was the enemy of the Gelugpa Yellow Hat sect of Buddhism. He was the enemy of the Gelugpa order, and he wanted to annihilate this Buddhist order and destroy all its monasteries in Tibet. And therefore the fifth Dalai Lama, the great fifth Dalai Lama, turned to another group of Mongols for help. And this group of Mongols were the Oirats in Jungaria. The Oirats in Jungaria. Okay. At about the same time, when the Dalai Lama turned to these Mongols, Tsokttaj ordered his son Arslan to occupy central Tibet with an army of 10,000 strong, but Arslan did not attack the Tibetan troops. Instead, he sided with the Dalai Lama. Okay, maybe, we don't know for sure, but maybe Arslan have heard that the Dalai Lama had invited the Oirats and thought it was wiser to go against his father's order and side with the Dalai Lama. We don't know, this is a possibility. Okay, in the second third of the 17th century, so roughly around this time, in Jungaria, in the Jungarian basin, we have a confederation of four big Oirat tribes: the Toros, the Torgut, the Durbut, and the Hoshut. Okay, and for a time they had been rivaling for hegemony in the Jungarian basin, and from this rivalry, a large number of Torguts and Durbuts left the region because of this rivalry. They left the region in 1626-27, and they ended up near the river Volga and the Caspian Sea, by the Caspian Sea, near the estuary of the river Volga, and they later became known as the Kalmyks. In 1636, another group, the Hoshut Mongols, the Hoshut Oirat Mongols of Baibagas Khan, led by Baibagas Khan's younger brother Gush Khan, headed for Amdo Tibet, that is the Qinghai region, to help out the Dalai Lama, responding to the call of the fifth Dalai Lama. So they went to the Qinghai region to defeat Tsokttaj, and in the first month of the next year, in 1637, they surprise attacked Tsokttaj's army near the Qinghai Lake. They defeated his Mongols and killed Tsokttaj himself. In 1638, a large-scale migration from Jungaria started, and about 100,000 people, mainly Hoshut people, but later also some Torgut, Toros, and Hoyt, and also Halch people arrived to Qinghai, to the Qinghai region, and they established a Khanate, the Hoshut Khanate of Qinghai, in the 17th century. Okay. Somewhat later, in the 1650s or in the 1660s, we don't know for sure. So in the mid 17th century, another smaller migration took place, a group of these Mongols who occupied Qinghai left their original homeland, within Qinghai, which was located near the Qinghai Lake, and they left their homeland because, most probably because they did not have enough pasture for their livestock to sustain their population, and they had heard that south from the Yellow River the pastures were fertile and extensive, water was abundant, and the area was scarcely populated, so they decided to go there. These Mongols moved slowly via what is now Gonghe, Guide, Tongde, Guinan, Tongren, Zeku, and Gannan in Gansu province, and they and this migration took them more than 20 years, and finally they reached their destination in what is today Henan Mongol Autonomous County. Okay, here they organized 4 banners, and they became known as the 4 Mongol banners south of the Huanghe River, of the Yellow River. Alright, so this is their history. This is how a group of the Mongols who defeated Tokhtotej and occupied Qinghai, a group of them migrated to this region, to Henan. Okay, now let's speak about the speakers of this language. So the speakers of Henan Oirat, well, it is exceptionally challenging to find any kind of material concerning the language of the Henan Oirats. There's a Chinese scholar called Gu Shiru or Jia Shiru who briefly mentions the variety in his book on the Dade Mongol dialect, and very briefly and erroneously enumerates a few phonological features in which Henan Oirat differs from Dade Mongol, from the Dade Mongol of Haishi Prefecture. A collection of Henan Oirat songs, riddles, and proverbs are accessible online, or until recently were accessible online at plateauculture.org, a resource sharing website dedicated for the study of the Tibetan plateau's cultures and ethnicities. But the most valuable sources of information on Henan Oirat are the remaining few speakers. And during my first visit to the county, to Henan County in 2007, I was told by locals that some old people still spoke this local Mongolian variety, but in the center it was nearly hopeless to find any speakers. Okay, then I told you how I met the speakers in Kisin and in Sirlong. Met the speakers, and now I want to turn to the most interesting speakers whom I came across during my research. Okay, our most important informants from Kisin are a middle-aged or elderly woman from Kisin. Her name is Sarji. Her name it's a Tibetan name. Sarji means revolution in Tibetan. Sarji is a daughter of a Han Chinese soldier and a Mongolian woman, so she's half Chinese, half Mongolian. But her dominant language is Amdo-Tibetan. She was born and grew up in Kisin, and later moved to the county center as an adult. There she established a shop, trading clothing and souvenirs from Mongolian style. So she's a shopkeeper. When she was a child, she spoke 2 languages, only 2 languages, Chinese and Mongolian, and did not know Tibetan till the age of 9. Till the age of 9, she didn't speak any Tibetan, she said. Her husband, who spoke fluent Mongolian, died in 2004. Sarji has a Dade Mongol friend from Haishi who used to be a good friend of her husband and worked as a Mongolian language teacher in Henan. He taught Mongolian to Sarji's 3 children. Sergi never conversed in Mongolian with this person, for he knew excellent Tibetan. So actually, Sergi's Mongolian became dormant. In her adulthood, he almost never used her Mongolian. Sergi's eldest son Batar had studied in Inner Mongolia and spoke fluent Mongolian with obvious traces of Dade Mongol and Barimja features. So her son spoke Mongolian, but a different variety, not the local variety of Mongolian, but a mixture of Oirat and Barimja, which is Inner Mongolian, the Inner Mongolian standard. He worked as an official in Sirlong township, and in his pastime made business trips to Inner Mongolia to import goods from her mother's shop. Okay, so this is their story. Later, Sergi's son married her girlfriend from Alsha, from an Inner Mongolian girl, and the new wife, moved to Henan and started working in her mother-in-law's shop. And this is the time this is in 2014 when also the young wife's parents visited Henan, and Sergi's Mongolian started to improve. He started to use Mongolian with these people, with his son's young wife and her parents, and she became almost fluent, but her Mongolian changed a lot. The Henan Oirat local characteristics of her speech started to disappear in favor of Inner Mongolian traits. So she became an Inner Mongolian speaker, essentially. Okay, we have Jamyan Jamtso, by a man by the name Jamyan Jamtso, who was born in 1966. He is a Buddhist monk in Kisin, and he speaks Henan Oirat almost fluently. Okay, and his uncle is also a monk, Galog, born in 1925, and he's completely fluent in Mongolian. And now we have Jamyan Jamtso's younger brother, Tamki. He was my youngest informant, the youngest person who could speak this local Mongolian variety. Tamki is also a monk, the younger brother of Jamyan Jamtso, and despite his young age, he spoke fluent Henan Oirat. He was the person with whom I could communicate most conveniently in this dialect. Tamki is a knowledge-thirsty person who enjoys reading and watching educational television channels. He turns to Mongolian language with keen interest. And when we asked him about Henan Oirat, he asked us about the other varieties of Mongolian. So he was really interested in Mongolian dialects. It was his hobby. Mongolian language, studying Mongolian language, studying about Mongolian language was his hobby. When he learned a new word from us, for example, he immediately transformed it according to the phonetic rules of the local Henan Oirat variety and incorporated this new word or expression into his vocabulary. He often watched Inner Mongolian channels and thought, and though he did not understand much from the programs, he learned new words and expressions from these. Okay. Galog, his uncle, the very old monk, remembered that when he was young in Henan, everybody spoke Mongolian, that is Henan Oirat, the local Mongolian dialect, in Kisin. And he himself learned Tibetan at the age of 23. And it appeared to me that he was already more competent in Tibetan than in Henan Oirat. Okay, he spoke fluent Henan Oirat, but his Tibetan was more dominant. This was my expression. Okay, when we had Gombu Jashi also a person. He when we interviewed him, he was 51. He was the person with the best command of Henan Oirat. He was the most fluent, and we interviewed him in 2014, and he used Henan Oirat on a daily basis with his elderly family members he lived with. And we had many other people over 70 who spoke nearly fluent Henan Oirat. Okay, now the people from Sirlung. I mentioned that in Sirlung we found only 3 people who spoke this dialect. One of them was Tsirin Dorji. Tsirin Dorji is a former school teacher and an amateur researcher in Sirlung Township. He started learning Henan Oirat from the remaining 3 old speakers in his late 20s. So when he was 20 something, he started to be interested in the local Mongolian variety, and he consciously improves his knowledge by reading books and other publications in Mongolian. And as a result, his vocabulary has become richer than that of the native speakers, and his usage of the language, including pronunciation, has been influenced by his readings. Therefore, we cannot treat him as an authentic speaker of Henan Oirat, because what he speaks is really a mixture of different varieties of Mongolian, but of course his knowledge on the dialect is valuable. Okay, he has published a book on Henan Oirat in Tibetan. So in Tibetan he wrote a little book, a small book on Henan Oirat, and according to Tsirin Dorji, only 3 Henan Oirat speakers are left in Sirlung, and we met 2 of them. 2 of them lived in the township, in Sirlung Township, and the third one lived a little bit farther, approximately 10 kilometers away from the township, in a place called Tumul. So Tumul is an interesting place name because this is the local variety of the term Tumut. It is named after the Tumut group of Mongols. Okay, this is interesting, but we couldn't meet this third person, only the 2 others plus Tsirin Dorji. Okay, so one of these 2 people was Jawa Damba, born in 1948, and Ge Zhang, born in 1943. They are the 2 old men in Sirlung Township who could still speak the local Henan Oirat variety. Now, having a conversation with them it was perceivable that once they had a full command of Henan Oirat, but their fluency in Henan Oirat had long gone, so they were not fluent any longer. Jawa Damb and Ge Zhang are not close friends or relatives, and if they happen to talk to each other, they use only Amdo-Tibetan. So they are the 2 last authentic speakers in the township center, but even when they meet each other, they don't speak Mongolian to each other. So they are pretty much left alone with their knowledge of the local Mongolian dialect. The only person they practice Henan Oirat with is Tsirin Dorji, this language enthusiast, who occasionally makes them speak it for his own research purposes. But even during these occasions, when they use they predominantly use Amdo-Tibetan for explanations. Okay, Jawa Damb, the younger man, had a better command of Henan Oirat, but even he had problems recalling basic Henan Oirat terminologies such as the word for leg, for example. So he wanted to say leg in Henan Oirat, but he just forgot. Okay, Gezang, when we interviewed Gezang, he said that he understood our questions, our Mongolian questions. We used Dade Mongol and the Mongol that we picked up in Kisin. We used a variety quite close to the local Henan Oirat. He understood all our questions, but had a hard time answering them. Okay, now let's speak a little bit about the most characteristic features, phonetic features of Henan Oirat. Okay, I don't want to go really deep into the features of Henan Oirat. I will. Well, I have posted some videos with excerpts from our interviews, but now let's just have a quick look at the most important, most salient phonetic features of Henan Oirat. Okay, Henan Oirat is an offshoot of Dade Mongol, as I have mentioned, and not surprisingly, they have a lot of common features. On the other hand, due to their isolation from the other groups of Dade Mongols and the strong influence of Amdo-Tibetan, Henan Oirat still retains many of its original features, and at the same time it had become a unique variety, separate from Dade Mongol. Before the examination of Henan Oirat, one has to take into account the main characteristics of Oirat and then of Dade Mongol. Okay, so if you start to study Henan Oirat, first you have to be familiar with Oirat in general. Okay, so one of the main features of the Henan Oirat sound system is that it doesn't have frontal rounded vowels. So Oirat usually has 8 basic short vowels: a, o, u, a, e, ö, ü, and i, and in Henan Oirat we do not have ö and ü. Instead, we have the schwa sound instead of ö, or e instead of ö, and we have i instead of ü. So for example, the word for younger sibling, which is du in Oirat, du, or du in Khalq, sounds like di in Henan Oirat. All right. Okay. In Henan Oirat we do not have the sound z or z. We don't have this sound. And in Oirat dialects we do have z, like for example in Zalu. In Zalu, in Oirat, Zalu means man, or or young man. Zalu. This would be Zalo in Khalq, and also in Henan Oirat we have a z sound instead of the z. Zalu. It means Zalu. It becomes Zalu. Okay. Well, now let's take a look at the consonantal changes. The consonantal changes are really interesting. The 3 most common consonantal changes makes Henan Oirat really interesting, really exotic sounding to everybody who speaks Khalq or Oirat. These consonantal changes are closely related to the same consonantal changes that had taken place in Amdo-Tibetan. Okay, so if you know Amdo-Tibetan, you can better understand Henan Oirat, these changes in Henan Oirat. For example, the initial b sound became a w, So B, the sound B often becomes a W sound in Mongolian dialects, but never in initial positions, only in Henan Oirat. So for example, the word for I or me, which is in Dade Mongol would be B, in Dade Mongol or in Halk Mongolian would be B, sounds like W in Henan Oirat. Or the word for building, Bashin, in Dade Mongolian Bashin, becomes Washin. Okay, and really interesting is the word for eagle. Eagle in Dade Mongolian is Burgut. This is the equivalent of Halk Burgut. Burgut in Dade Mongolian becomes Wergil in Dade Mongolian. Okay, Wergil. Okay, we don't have the B sound in initial position. We have the W sound instead, and we don't have Ö. We have for the first Ö, for the Ö in the first syllable, we have a sound, an unrounded schwa sound, and in the second syllable we have a I sound, so Wergil. Okay, and we have an L sound at the end of the word. I will speak about this L quite soon. Okay, also the word for bichik, which is writing in Dade Mongol, bichik becomes wachag. Okay, wachag in Dade Mongol, and B, which is body in Dade Mongol, B becomes waya. Okay, so this is a B changing into a W sound is also a characteristic feature of Amdo-Tibetan. Okay, instead of a B in the Lhasa dialect, let's say for example, we have a W sound in Amdo-Tibetan. For example, just for a Tibetan example, bod means Tibet in Tibetan, bod, written Tibetan bod becomes wol in Amdo-Tibetan, and this is the L sound that I have just mentioned. Instead of a final D in written Tibetan, in Amdo-Tibetan we have an L. So this is the reason why Burgut, at the end of this word in Henan Oirat, we have Wergil. Burgut, Wergil. Okay. An initial sh sound, ash. This is a palatalized sh sound in Dade Mongolian. We have a curious sound, h becomes h. Okay, so for example, shar, which means yellow in Dade Mongolian, becomes shar. Chikir, which is in Dade Mongolian sugar, chikir becomes hukar. And shul, soup, shul becomes hul. Shid, which is tooth, shid becomes hada. And shaga, which means ankle bone in Dade Mongolian, becomes huga. Okay. Also, a Tibetan example for this is sha, written Tibetan sha, which means meat, the meat that we eat. In Amdo-Tibetan becomes sha. So this is also an Amdo-Tibetan influence. Okay, and I mentioned the final D sound becoming an L sound. For example, this is also an Amdo-Tibetan influence. Burgut becomes Wergil, and Torgut, the name of this Mongolian tribe, Torgut becomes Torgul, and also the name of the tribe of the Tumid becomes Tamil. Okay. So these are the main consonantal changes, and we have this curious h sound that I mentioned. This is a palatal velar fricative, the h sound. If I am correct, this sound exists not only in Amdo-Tibetan. For example, in Swedish, we can find this sound. Okay. Now, so these changes, these sound changes, cause some trouble. Cause some trouble in the language, of course, and this creates some homonyms in the first round, but these homonyms have to be avoided in order to make ourselves understood. Now, I would like to say a few words about how this local Henan Oirat variety avoids creating homonyms. Okay, the avoidance of creating homonyms. Due to the above mentioned sound changes, the pronunciation of certain words that were distinct before these changes took place, before these changes happened, the pronunciation of these words got closer to each other. Okay. For example, during our fieldwork, we encountered two cases in which this process could impede understanding and lead to confusion. The Oirat words, for example, köl, which means leg or feet or foot, köl, and kel, which means tongue. So two different body parts, as well as the word for yellow, shar, and the word for black, khar. So these words have become difficult to understand because in the first round, because of their similar pronunciation in Henan Oirat. So, for example, the ö in köl, according to the above described trends, the trends that I have just mentioned, has been replaced by an e sound. So it became kel. Köl became kel, and thus it sounds similar to kel, which is it sounds identical to tongue. So the word for foot sounds like the word for tongue, and in shar, which means yellow, the sh sound had become a h sound, sounding really similar to the h in har. Okay, so in fluent speech, h and h are really difficult to distinguish. Okay, but Henan Oirat speakers avoid the confusion by elongating the pronunciation of kel, the word for tongue, and har, the word for black, in which results in the forms kel and har respectively. Okay, so foot in Henan Oirat sounds like kel, but tongue sounds like kel. Okay, and shar, yellow, in Henan Oirat sounds like shar, sounds like har, but the black sounds like har in Henan Oirat. So they elongate these vowels, and they also, in most cases, they also pronounce a reduced schwa at the end of the word. So har and hara are yellow and black respectively, and kel and kela are foot or leg and tongue respectively. Okay, so now a few words about the endangerment of this dialect. Okay, the condition of the vitality of this Henan Oirat dialect. Today, the vocabulary, even of the most fluent speakers of Henan Oirat, is considerably limited. In Kisin, for example, my impression of the dialect was that it was confined to a private sphere of the speakers, within the walls of their homes, and therefore the vocabulary had shrank to an extent that is just enough for everyday, mostly indoor situations. In Kisin, I also experienced the vanishing of oral literature. The only piece of oral tradition widely known among the speakers in Kisin, for example, is the so-called felt-making song. So when the Mongols make felt for their yurts, they sing a song. Almost everybody knows this song. Okay, this song was sung while beating the wool with sticks, so that it become thick enough to make the felt. And the lyrics of the song is very simple, basically counting from 1 to 100 with rhythm and melody. Apart from the felt making song, some of the informants, some speakers could recall 2 blessings, and one of them attempted to sing a folk song but remembered only its first line, similarly to that old man in his 70s who made a similar attempt with yet another song, but didn't remember the lyrics. Okay, one of the speakers I met could tell a tale or recall any other. None of these speakers could tell a tale or recall any other piece of folk literature in Henan Oirat. Okay, in spite of Amdo-Tibetan's overwhelming dominance and the rapidly shrinking domain of this dialect in Kisin, many people over 40 and virtually everybody over 60 could speak some Henan Oirat, due to the fact that even the oldest speakers like Gelug are more confident in Amdo-Tibetan, and there is no situation in which communication could be successful only in Henan Oirat. The dialect is certainly doomed to die out. Similar revitalization that had attempted with the employment of Mongolian teachers from Haishi, for example. Haishi teachers were employed, and also from Inner Mongolia. So these, if at all successful, these attempts would only accelerate the disappearance of Henan Oirat, because they would replace it with Dade Mongolian or Inner Mongolian varieties. So in Henan County, many are happy to accept and rediscover their own Mongolian identities, and some, especially young people, are interested in learning the Mongolian language or establishing personal contacts with Mongols from other parts of Qinghai and Inner Mongolia. In the county center, Sergi's shop is not the only one that trades clothes and souvenirs of Mongolian style. There are many other shops like this in Henan County, so there is an interest towards Mongolian culture and language. And it is possible that interpersonal relationships and business contacts between the Mongols of Henan and of other Mongolian inhabited regions within China will proliferate in the forthcoming decades. This is a possibility. And as a consequence, the number of Mongolian speakers might significantly increase in Henan County. But if things play out this way, the dialect of the residents of Henan will choose that they will choose to learn the Barimja or the Dade Mongol standards instead of the local Henan Oirat dialect, or they will be speakers of a mixture of these dialects and not the native dialect of Kisin or Sirlung, these townships. Okay, so if we come to assess the vitality of Henan Oirat and the degree of endangerment, then we will get the result that this dialect Henan Oirat is severely endangered, and this is on the brink of extinction. Okay, thank you for your attention.